With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: police provide update on female student incident at Washington Archibald High School. Environment and Climate Action Minister highlights implications of upcoming Global Sustainable Islands Summit. Prime Minister Drew announces formation of Healthcare Steering Committee to advance healthcare in St. Kitts and Nevis. OECS and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting addressed critical regional issues, U.S. trade tariffs, migration, and security concerns. Caribbean Police Commissioner meeting opens in Guyana. Internationally, U.S. and Saudi Arabia agreed to $142 billion weapons sale during Trump visit. Now, the details. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force have released additional information regarding the incident involving a female student who fell from the second-story balcony at the Washington Archibald High School on May 8, 2025. According to the police, officers were dispatched promptly to the school following information concerning the student's welfare. While no official report was filed with the police, the gravity of the information received necessitated an immediate response aimed at safeguarding the child's safety and well-being. The incident is currently being managed by the Ministry of Education, which has taken an active role in addressing the matter at the school. The police force continues to collaborate with the ministry, emphasizing its readiness to provide further assistance should circumstances require renewed involvement. In view of protecting the privacy and welfare of the student involved, and given the sensitive nature of the situation, authorities have refrained from disclosing additional particulars at this time. The public is asked to respect the need for confidentiality. St. Kitts and Nevis is preparing to welcome global leaders, experts, and sustainability advocates as the Federation takes center stage for the 2025 Global Sustainable Island Summit, scheduled for May 27th to 29th. The summit, a collaborative initiative between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and Island Innovation, a consultancy specializing in sustainability, innovation, and development for islands, aims to promote sustainable solutions for island nations worldwide. The event is part of a growing movement to elevate the voices and innovations of small island developing states (SIDS) in the global sustainability dialogue. The 2025 summit will build on the momentum of the recently concluded 2024 Fourth International Conference of Small Island Developing States (SIDS 4), focusing on four key thematic areas: water sustainability and energy nexus, agricultural resilience and climate adaptation, climate health interactions, and geothermal energy. In a recent appearance on In Focus, Minister of Environment and Climate Action, the Honorable Dr. Joyle Clark, and Executive Research Officer Akwanje Robinson shared their expectations and the broader implications of the summit. Minister Clark underscored the global recognition of the Federation's leadership in climate advocacy, noting the presence of high-level international stakeholders participating in the summit.
It's not just for island nations, but for persons who work with island nations and development partners. But that all of these persons are coming to convene in Little St. Kitts for 5 full days on thematic issues that are critical to us says a lot not only about our agenda, it says a lot about the global reach of St. Kitts and Nevis from the voice of our Prime Minister, who has made it clear to the world, I think from COP28 in Dubai, when he shared the stage with the likes of Bill Gates and VP Harris, that we're not looking for handouts, we are looking for partnership. Fast forward 2 years and here we are, a global partnership with many actors. The potential is just exponential.
Robinson echoed her sentiments, highlighting the opportunity for SIDS to influence global climate policy directly.
These people are persons of high influence and high power in the decision-making bodies that cause the changes that we aspire to happen. So if these influential people have a chance to listen to us island nations and small island developing states up close, I think it offers a grand opportunity for them to implement those changes at the tables they sit at.
The summit comes at a time of heightened concern in the global climate space. In 2024, the world broke new temperature records, nearing the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold outlined in the Paris Agreement. The agreement itself has faced renewed uncertainty following the second withdrawal of financial support by the United States, a move viewed by many climate advocates as a setback in the collective fight against climate change. Despite such challenges, island nations like St. Kitts and Nevis remain at the front line of climate action, often pioneering innovative adaptation and mitigation strategies. The upcoming summit will provide a key platform for SIDS to demonstrate leadership, share best practices, and seek actionable commitments for international stakeholders. With just 2 weeks to go, preparations are ongoing to ensure the summit amplifies the voices of island nations and catalyzes meaningful global partnerships and progress on sustainability goals. Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew revealed significant plans to transform healthcare delivery in the Federation during a recent sitting of the National Assembly. Establishing a healthcare steering committee is central to this new phase, which Prime Minister Drew described as a pivotal step toward strengthening the nation's health system.
I want to inform this Honourable House that for the first time we'll be implementing what is called the Healthcare Steering Committee. This committee will be comprised of the Minister of Health, the Minister of Finance, or the Ministry of Finance. It will be comprised of the Medical Association, Medical and Dental Association, also the Ministry of Social Services, the PS of Health, the PNO, NGOs, community services, and, of course, the private sector. I will say this in this Honourable House, that this would function as a body that would steer the direction of health here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I envisage that the first meeting to be had will be held within the next 2 weeks. I've informed the senior management of the Ministry of Health that this will be coming forward, and so I take this opportunity to inform the public. Why? We are on a journey with many things, Madam Speaker, and for many years, many of the structures and organizations, they may not have been fit for purpose, or time would come when they need to change direction, as we would have done in various sectors and ministries, and therefore this is one.
This committee is designed to provide strategic oversight, ensuring that St. Kitts and Nevis's health governance adapts to evolving needs with efficiency and foresight. Complementing this initiative, Prime Minister Drew also revealed plans to form an internal committee within the Ministry of Health, concluding that both measures are integral components of the broader healthcare transformation underway. He elaborated on the context of this overhaul.
Initially, our main focus was to take care of the stuff or the things at the hospital which needed to change, such as to fix the leaking roof. The roof of the hospital was leaking for many years. To deal with the issue of air conditioning at the hospital. To deal with the issue of equipment, including anesthesiology equipment, CT scan, and ultrasounds, etc. To deal with the dialysis, to have enough dialysis machines. To deal with the ventilators, to have enough ventilators, to rehabilitate the area of the morgue, to rehabilitate the operating rooms, to rehabilitate the foyer or the entrance of the hospital.
Prime Minister Drew underscored the significant investment poured into upgrading the Joseph and France General Hospital, emphasizing the scale and depth of improvements. He highlighted a key partnership with the Republic of China Taiwan concerning rehabilitating the psychiatric ward, demonstrating international cooperation in enhancing healthcare infrastructure.
Now we are in the process of rehabilitating the psychiatric ward, that one in collaboration with the Republic of China Taiwan. Presently, we are nearing the completion of the housing for the MRI, which is costing us, I think, $1.7 million or a little bit more. The MRI is expected to be here. Just wanted to update our people. We are getting very close to have the machine here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we would have invested millions of dollars, Madam Speaker, significant amount of input in this JNF hospital to make sure that it can deliver modern health care to our people.
Dr. Drew also addressed advancements in human resources, proudly sharing the expanded presence of medical specialists at the hospital.
We have invested in staff development. We have invested in getting more specialists on the ground. Now, the next stage, after we would have taken care of those things, but this was working in parallel, is to establish this steering committee which will dictate. And at the level of the hospital, We are going to form what is called the medical executive team, which will be made up of all of the head specialists. So the head specialist from pediatric ward, the head specialist from surgical ward, the head doctor from the emergency room, gynecology, nephrology, oncology, urology, nephrology. These are so many specialists. We also have endocrinology, urology, anesthesiology, ophthalmology. It is the most varied or the highest number of specialists that we have ever had, and we are covering the highest number of specialty areas in the history of JNF. That has been tremendous work, Madam Speaker. However, the journey must continue, and therefore we will ask the community to be a part of this journey, as I've asked them to be a part of the journey for national security, asked them to be a part of the journey for almost everything we have done, even the bill that we passed yesterday. None of these things can be achieved if the people are not part of the journey. And so they will be a part of this journey as well. And so I'm happy to announce this, because this, of course, is part of the journey that we are on. We are going to create different structures, governance structures, so that it can respond to the needs as we continue to build out our ministry.
The Healthcare Steering Committee announcement marks a decisive moment in the ongoing efforts to modernize healthcare services in St. Kitts and Nevis. It signals a new era of enhanced governance and community involvement for the benefit of all citizens. In regional news, OECS and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting addressed critical regional issues, U.S. trade tariffs, migration, and security concerns. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that story.
The meeting followed earlier talks in March between Secretary Rubio and 6 CARICOM leaders, held before President Donald Trump signed an executive order introducing a sweeping 10% tariff on all U.S. imports, including from CARICOM member states. The order also enforces steeper tariffs on other countries, with China facing the highest rates. The May 6 discussions provided Caribbean leaders a platform to directly raise concerns about the economic impact of the tariffs. Talks also focused on trade imbalances, the role of Cuban medical personnel, transnational crime, migration, and China's growing presence in the region. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit stated that Caribbean leaders reaffirmed their commitment to work with the United States to support legal migration pathways.
Of course, the issue of the illegal immigration was spoken about, and of course we're not at variance with the United States in respect to their immigration policies. Clearly, the immigration policies which are being implemented by the United States government is no different to that of every country in the world. And we have committed to working with them with an effort towards reducing, if not eliminating, illegal migration within our hemisphere. But we also urge the Secretary of State, and of course by extension the U.S. government, to ensure that they continue to facilitate legal migration by the provision of visas to students, to visitors, the various work programs, and of course we believe that this will continue.
Regarding the presence of Cuban medical teams, regional leaders emphasized the importance of these professionals to their public health systems.
We explained to him how this is operating within our countries, and I believe he understands that. So I do not see any threat to the Cuban medical programs which we all have within our countries.
They clarified that the doctors are paid directly, while governments pay a facilitation fee to the Cuban government, similar to standard arrangements for international medical missions.
We have these programs. They are based on international standards. The human rights of every person who is participating in this program is protected. They work under best international practices, the International Labour Organization standards. They've been paid their salaries and their wages like everyone else.
On the issue of China, Caribbean officials approached the topic with measured language. Countries with diplomatic and economic ties to China reiterated their right to pursue broad-based development partnership. Leaders stressed that these relationships are focused on economic cooperation, not ideological alignment, and reaffirmed that their only military alliances are with the United States and fellow CARICOM states. The meeting concluded with a mutual agreement to continue dialogue on key regional issues amid evolving global economic and geopolitical shifts. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
Caribbean Police Commissioner meeting opens in Guyana, News Source Guyana reports.
President Irfan Ali today warned that criminal elements can overrun the Caribbean region if there is no coordination and cooperation among regional law enforcement agencies. Speaking at the opening of the 39th annual meeting and conference of the Association of Caribbean Commissioners of Police, the president said the region continues to face great difficulties in its homicide rate, assault and threats, illegal firearms and gang and drug-related activities and violence.
And yet, I must say clearly and honestly, if we fail to deepen our cooperation as a region, if we remain siloed in our responses, then we will be overrun, not by the criminals within our borders, by those who know no borders at all. Let us not pretend otherwise. The region is not immune to the currents of globalization. The same openness that allows our people to travel, to trade, and to communicate across borders is the very openness that criminal network exploits.
In addition, the president said the Caribbean continues to face issues of an overburdened justice system and police services that are in need of reform, restructuring, and investments. But he said the crime problem in the region must be arrested, as it has the potential to bring democracy to its knees.
Make no mistake, criminal gangs pose a direct threat to democratic systems of government. And I want to emphasize, the democratic systems of government. Those who are interested in undemocratic ways or who are accustomed to breaking the law and the rule of law, they don't see this threat. But gangs pose a direct threat to a democratic system. They undermine the rule of law by corrupting institutions and instilling fear.
According to the president, given the gravity of the threats facing the region, regional security can no longer be addressed in isolation or within the confines of national borders. He said the security challenges facing the region demand regional solutions.
These threats do not begin and end on our shores. They move swiftly and silently across jurisdictions. And each time they do, they grow stronger, more sophisticated, and more deeply embedded in the region. This is why we must recognize a simple but profound truth. What affects one of us today will affect all of us tomorrow.
And the president also noted that the Caribbean region must be on top of its game and not play catch-up because the stakes are high. He said while police forces in the region have their challenges, accountability must also be demanded. Meanwhile, Police Commissioner Clifton Hicken in his address said security forces in the region are facing significant challenges in their fight against transnational crimes. The commissioner said crimes committed in one country directly or indirectly affect other countries in the region, and as such it is important for them to work together.
No Caribbean nation is immune, and none can stand alone. We are now facing a new wave of cross-border crime, more organized, more violent, more technologically advanced than ever before. Our traditionally and national confined policing models are no longer sufficient. The threats are clear.
The opening of the conference was also addressed by the Minister of Home Affairs, Robeson Ben, and the President of the Association of Caribbean Commissioners of Police, Alti Rodney. The Regional Police Commissioners Conference will wrap up later this week.
We now bring you these international reports.
From the moment Air Force One entered Saudi airspace flanked by F-15 fighter jets, Donald Trump enjoyed a royal welcome to Saudi Arabia on his first major international trip of his second term. As the U.S. president's limousine, known as the Beast, approached the royal court, it was escorted by riders on Arabian horses and greeted by an honor guard playing both nations' national anthems. Once inside, Trump, the Crown Prince, dignitaries, and business leaders from both countries participated in a lavish coffee and tea ceremony. The warm relationship between the two leaders on full display.
It's an honor to be you, my friend, and we've had a tremendous relationship over the years. It's now a long time. We got to know each other when you visited the White House. I remember it so well, and I was so impressed with this young guy who was very wise beyond his years. He was 31 years old, I think, at the time. And he was really very wise, and we became friendly.
The White House says the goal of Trump's trip is to deepen ties between the United States and Gulf kingdoms. The U.S. president is also hoping to secure more than $1 trillion in defense spending, up from the current $600 billion already pledged from Saudi Arabia. Ahead of a Saudi-U.S. investment forum, chief executives like Elon Musk of Tesla and Sam Altman of ChatGPT, among other global tech, business, and consumer leaders, joined Trump for his tour, pushing for FaceTime with Trump and the Crown Prince. Saudi Arabia is one of the world's largest investors in artificial intelligence as it looks to diversify its oil-based economy. The goal of Donald Trump's trip is to shore up relations with a trio of key U.S. allies in the region. He also hopes to show, through securing investments from 3 royal kingdoms, that he's a deal-making king on the world stage. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, Riyadh.
To Ukraine, because President Zelensky has been giving details about his trip to Turkey later this week. We know he'll meet with President Erdogan, but of course the possibility, albeit slim, that he may meet Vladimir Putin if the Russian president takes part in talks to end the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin has refused to say whether Mr. Putin will actually make that journey. Well, let's speak to our correspondent Frank Gardner, who was at the press conference with Ukraine's president. And Frank, what was he saying about his readiness to sit down with Vladimir Putin and the chances of that actually happening?
Well, readiness yet. He said, I simply don't know if President Putin is going to come to the talks in Turkey, or indeed if President Trump, who has hinted that he may attend. He doesn't have the answer to either of those, but he said, look, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to secure peace for Ukraine, but the priority must be a 30-day ceasefire, which all Ukraine's allies, he said, had signed up to. And that, of course, was due to begin yesterday morning. Now, there has been a bit of a let-up in some of the long-range airstrikes, but the fact is that Russia has not yet signed up to that ceasefire. He pointed out that Ukraine had agreed to that comprehensive ceasefire way back in March, on March the 11th, 63 days ago. But he said he's going to fly to Ankara, to the Turkish capital, to meet there with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan before he meets Putin. Now, he said if Putin goes to Istanbul and he's in Ankara, he doesn't want geography to be an excuse for no meeting. He will get on a plane and fly on to Istanbul to meet him there. What he's not prepared to do is to hold talks as president of Ukraine with somebody more junior than President Putin. He said this is only the only person who can stop the fighting is President Putin, Vladimir Putin himself.
I also read that he was saying that if Putin doesn't show, that he is pushing for the strongest set of sanctions yet to be imposed on Russia. We saw that gathering in Kyiv only over the weekend. Is that likely if those events play out in the way I've just said?
I don't think the threat of European sanctions is massively going to hurt the Kremlin. They pretty much shrugged off that joint stance that took place here back on Saturday. What would hurt is if President Trump makes good on his earlier threat that he hinted at, was that if he decides that, as in his words, President Putin is tapping him along, i.e. stringing him along, then he would consider secondary sanctions. That means putting sanctions on those countries like China and India that buy Russia's oil. And it's the money that Russia gets from those sales, admittedly at reduced prices, but nevertheless, that money fuels Russia's war effort. That would hurt. But President Trump, of course, is notoriously quixotic. He seems to change his mind from one week to the next as to which country he's blaming. His most recent outburst on his own social media platform, Truth Social, was full of capital letters and exclamation marks and telling Ukraine it must turn up to the talks in Turkey. Ukraine said, OK, we will. But we still don't know if President Putin is going to be there or not. So I think President Zelensky, and I was only a couple of meters away from him at this press conference, he laid it out what their position was. He clearly doesn't want to be seen as the obstacle for peace. And I think he's played this one fairly cleverly. He's not giving President Putin the option to blame him for failing to turn up.
In Tunisia's olive groves, an innovative company is addressing environmental challenges by transforming agricultural waste into valuable energy resources. Tunisian company Bioheat says it has developed technology that compacts olive residue, locally known as fitoura, into efficient fuel briquettes. Here's the company's founder, engineer Yassine Khalifi.
So, 1 kilogram from us replaces 4 kilograms of firewood and also reduces CO2 emissions during combustion. In addition to that, the carbon footprint of its production is minimal. We don't use dryers, we use air drying. We use minimal resources for compaction. So carbon footprint during production is minimal. In addition, the carbon footprint during combustion is 30% lower than that of wood. This is based on analysis we have conducted.
The innovation claims to solve a giant problem for the industry. According to Harimela oil company manager Hakim Salmi, Tunisia is one of the largest producers of olive oil. He says it generates around 1.5 million tonnes of olive residue waste, which is currently being dumped into the environment. And that projects like Bioheat add value to and prevent a large portion of waste being discharged into nature. The briquettes have caught on among restaurants, guest houses and schools throughout Tunisia, particularly in underdeveloped regions where winter temperatures can drop below freezing. Business owners like Mohammed Harar have embraced this eco-friendly alternative.
Fitoura has replaced firewood for us. Whereas we used to buy a load or a load and a half of firewood, now we use much less. And the product is better than firewood. It gives us better results and saves us money. So financially we've gained a lot from using Fitoura, especially with Bioheat.
Bioheat doesn't plan to stop at olive waste, hoping to turn all agricultural waste into fuel or other usable forms.
Rapper Sean Diddy Combs, who has been a pivotal figure in bringing hip-hop to the mainstream, went on trial in New York on Monday. He is accused of leading a 2-decade racketeering and sex trafficking conspiracy.
His infamous white parties are where some of these freak-offs allegedly happened.
Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges and denied wrongdoing. Here is what you need to know. Combs faces 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, and 2 counts of transporting for prostitution. Prosecutors must prove all elements of each count beyond a reasonable doubt, and all 12 jurors must vote unanimously to convict on each count. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. Prosecutors allege that for 2 decades, Combs used his business empire to lure women into his orbit with promises of romantic relationships or financial support, and then allegedly violently coerced them into participating in drug-fueled sexual performances. Here is former federal prosecutor Niama Rahmani.
A freak-off is what Diddy referred to as one of these drug-induced orgies, and they would last reportedly days. And Combs would reportedly videotape these freak-offs, both for his sexual pleasure and maybe to maintain control over the other participants.
Prosecutors allege that Combs kept his victims obedient by drugging and blackmailing them.
While they were participating in these orgies, the allegations are that they were not free to leave or free to say no. And in addition to that force element, there are allegations that Diddy and his crew, they drugged these victims. And these drug-induced orgies would last days. And at least according to the indictment, the drug use was so rampant that the victims would need IVs and medical attention when it was all said and done.
Combs' defense lawyers argued that the sex described by prosecutors was consensual and a part of his, quote, swinger lifestyle. His defense team will likely attack the credibility of his accusers, suggesting they had financial incentives to make false allegations. The defense will also contest a hotel surveillance video showing Combs kicking and dragging one of his accusers. Combs' lawyers say the video, first published by CNN, was edited to look as damning as possible and lacks context. 3, possibly 4 accusers are expected to testify, including Combs' former girlfriend Cassandra Ventura, known as Cassie. It's uncertain if Combs will take the stand. Defense lawyers often advised against it to avoid cross-examination. Prosecutors expect the trial to last 8 to 10 weeks in a case that has drawn intense media coverage. Beyond this trial, Combs is facing over 50 lawsuits alleging sexual assault and rape. He has denied these allegations, which seek monetary damages.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: police provide update on female student incident at Washington Archibald High School. Environment and Climate Action Minister highlights implications of upcoming Global Sustainable Islands Summit. Prime Minister Drew announces formation of Healthcare Steering Committee to advance healthcare in St. Kitts and Nevis. OECS and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting addressed critical regional issues, U.S. trade tariffs, migration, and security concerns. Caribbean Police Commissioner meeting opens in Guyana. Internationally, U.S. and Saudi Arabia agreed to $142 billion weapons sale during Trump visit. Thank you for listening.